Kevin, hello and welcome to the show. So excited for our conversation today.
Thanks, Rose. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here and to chat with you.
Yeah, well, this interview has been a long time coming, and we have so much to cover for this interview. This week, you recently announced that you've joined True Anomaly as their business development strategist. So, first of all, congratulations. That is very exciting. We definitely have to talk about how you got here. But first, I would love to start our conversation by going back to the beginning of your career, the beginning of your story here, and your journey in the space and defense industry. To start, could you share a little bit about what originally inspired your career in space systems and defense? And did you always know that you wanted to work in the space and defense industry?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I think, as a kid, I really didn't even know the space industry was an option for me. My parents immigrated to the US from Mexico, and, while they instilled their entrepreneurial and resilient spirit into me, I didn't really have anyone in my circles that did space things. So I think the only association I had with space was, in the movies, and like even had a pair of Buzz Lightyear pajamas that I used to wear as a kid. And kind of funny, like last year, the real Buzz Aldrin had a promotion ceremony at Los Angeles Air Force Base, and I was actually able to meet him. So it's kind of
Oh,
full
wow.
circle there. But yeah, so like what I did know was that math, science, sports, anything competitive, that I love that kind of stuff. So that led me to fly planes in high school, little Cessnas, and then my one of my friends in high school told me about the Air Force Academy, and that's what really got me interested in, oh, okay, maybe aerospace and military service would be a good career for me. And so went to the Air Force Academy, unfortunately medically disqualified from being a pilot, but I was introduced, to some really good friends there and introduced to astronautics there as well, senior year.
Wow.
So that's how I got in.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I love that story about, not really knowing much or not having much exposure at first throughout your childhood to the space industry. And for those for our listeners out there who don't know, Buzz Aldrin is the second person to that had set foot on the moon. So that is very, very exciting. Just to see, from being a kid to now uh, being able to meet and just have a network with individuals who are so established in the field, going on to do great things. So that is very, very exciting. That's amazing. That's amazing. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story there. For you to like understand your journey from going on to the Air Force Academy and then through there, eventually finding your way to the space industry. That's very good. It just shows that the path to the industry is certainly it can be nonlinear. So thank you. I mean, everyone has a different experience, a different journey getting to where they are today. So thank you for sharing yours. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that fact. Like no matter what skills you bring or where you are right now, you can definitely still make it into the space industry if you're interested and curious.
Absolutely. And I know that is definitely very inspiring for our listeners out there who, prior to our conversation might not know much about the space industry or, the different career options out there, what the work being done in the field looks like. So that's why we're here today. And now I would
Mm.
love to talk about your experience at the Space Force. For someone new to national defense topics, let's say, what is Space Force? And I know you also worked at Space Systems Command. So, how does Space Force work with and differently from Space Systems Command? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, so the Space Force is the newest military service branch, established in 2019 with bipartisan support. And it came from a widespread recognition that space was a national security imperative. The last 60 years of space capabilities have become essential to the way a modern military conducts operations. investments in space capabilities have increased the effectiveness of those operations in every other domain, land, air, sea. Um, and the military is faster, better connected, more informed, and more lethal because of space. So that access to and freedom to operate in space underpins our national security
Mm.
and our economic prosperity. But unfortunately, space is no longer free from conflict. Adversaries are there, and they're seeking ways to deny the US access to our space capabilities, which are fundamental to our way of life. So that's why the Space Force was created. That's what the Space Force does, is protects the US national interests in, from, and to space. And then Space Systems Command is the subordinate field command that develops and acquires all of those warfighting capabilities for the Space Force.
Mm.
So we're the Space Systems Command is the builders of those capabilities.
I see, I see. And thank you for that breakdown. I think for a lot of the folks listening to our episode today, to our interview and conversation, they might not be too familiar with the different agencies, the different structures. And so that breakdown is definitely very, very helpful. Just to understand, how the two work together and what the different objectives are. So thank you. Thank you for that breakdown from someone who's definitely worked on both sides. So thank you. And you actually have experience evaluating startups for the Space Force for Space Force investment. So, could you tell us a little bit about your experience there? What trends did you notice among the space startups that were actually selected for investment from the Space Force, whose capabilities were adopted, and how could you give us a glimpse into how entrepreneurs successfully balance creative innovation with specific practical needs of the Space Force and other government agencies so that they can make an impact and provide investable solutions? Because I know with school use or just in general, being able to partner with agencies like Space Force, I mean, these are big challenges you guys are trying to solve. The team is trying to solve. So, what does that look like? And what did you notice there? Can you give us some insights to that experience?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I think I want to start by kind of giving a little background of why the Space Force is even interested in startups. Like, why would we let these
Absolutely.
unproven entrepreneurs come into the industry and develop capabilities for us? And I think it's because we've recognized that innovation and creativity happens best in open markets with commercial customers. And so we want to be able to leverage that innovation engine that is so unique to the United States and is our advantage in a near peer conflict. And so um, that is sort of the background. And now that we're getting all these entrepreneurs pitching us on their capabilities that they can deliver and getting venture capital involved, we can move a lot faster. But there's some key factors that contribute to a successful startup or entrepreneur, and I think what we really benefit from is a good understanding from the entrepreneur of what their commercial market is going to be, and also what the Space Force need is specifically. And that's a little challenging to get specific because of classification challenges, but
Mhm.
it's something you can build adjacently for the commercial market. And then once you build that, then come to Space Force and we can tack on the special stuff that we need onto it.
I see. That's really interesting. And do you find that there's ways that entrepreneurs can get a better glimpse or just a better idea of what the demand signals are from agencies like Space Force? I know you said it's a little challenging. Oftentimes, these entrepreneurs will just work with their commercial partners, and then once, partnered with the Space Force or an agency to kind of merge capabilities, that's kind of when you get more specific and really more focused towards the Space Force needs, as you mentioned. So, but are there other channels? Do a lot of these folks who are building these capabilities through startups, do they like, is there kind of like a common profile? I mean, does everyone kind of have an idea because they have a background with Space Force or these agencies, or is it kind of just, is it a mixed bag? What does that look like?
I mean, it's definitely good to have someone on your team that does have that insight, even if
Mhm.
they can't talk about it openly. But there's a couple of really key organizations that help do some of that um, high level translation of our needs
Mhm.
for entrepreneurs. So like you had Murph Busby on a previous interview, and
That's right.
his organization, DTI, hosts accelerators and they make introductions to government customers within Space Force. And so that's like the premier organization, as well as SpaceWorks, and SpaceWorks is the innovation arm of the Space Force, and they actually award $300 million a year in
Wow.
again high level um, sort of um, unclassified, if you will, um, research grants, basically.
Mhm.
And using that as an entry point into the Space Force allows you to start having those conversations with the end customers.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I'd point you to those two organizations.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up because you're right. Certainly, there are a lot of different players in the ecosystem. The DTI is a great, great example that just provide industry events and mixers and networking opportunities where commercial stakeholders, commercial, entrepreneurs in the space tech industry can then meet and, talk to government officials, people talking about the current challenges that, our agencies face today in national defense on topics of space technology, advancing capabilities. So absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that example. And I would love to talk a little bit more about insights that you've gained from just your experience. You've built an extensive career within the space systems field. So, from your experience there, could you share with the audience, how do space systems impact everyday life beyond defense? For those who might not be familiar, I know we've talked about like military capabilities and securing national space interests, but an ability to operate in space, which is very important. But relating a little more to the audience, how can they think about space systems in their everyday life?
Sure. Happy to help illuminate that because it's just in every facet of our everyday life, really.
Mhm.
From like satellite communications, enabling um, phone or video calls, or now internet and even direct to cell service from space is helping connect the entire world, places that is too expensive to lay down fiber optic cables,
Mm.
in remote locations, in the mountains, etc. It's now they have access to the internet and all the knowledge and the benefits and that come with that. And so, satellite communications one, of course, and then we all know about GPS. That's how we get around. But what most of us don't think about on a daily basis is that our our time, like the actual, the time that this computer uses to um, synchronize between, our two computers to be able to communicate with each other, they're dependent on using that same time. And that time comes from atomic clocks that are on board of the GPS satellites that are orbiting in space, and them communicating that time on a regular, basis with our critical infrastructure. And so that, and then looking towards the future, um, NASA's going back to the moon, and
That's right.
SpaceX is
Yeah.
gunning for Mars, and there's plans to have permanent human presence on those planets. I think
Mhm.
in the long run, um, it's sort of inevitable, in my opinion, to expand beyond the cradle of humanity, as some people like to say, and venture out into space. So I think it's just a lot of practical applications now, and a lot of inspiring everyday applications in the future.
Absolutely. That is definitely, and I'm so happy that you brought that up because yes, NASA with the Artemis, Artemis missions to the moon. Again, this is just such an exciting time to be in the industry. So to really be able to understand, the practical applications here on Earth, and then go on to understand, okay, hey, where are we going next? This is how space has helped enhance our quality of life here on Earth. Where are we going next? As you mentioned, to the moon, to Mars. Possibilities are limitless. And, with all the upcoming projects going on at NASA, SpaceX, it is certainly an exciting time to be familiar with the industry, get into the industry. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Definitely. Those are two really, really big developments happening right now. So I personally can't wait to see where it leads. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited watching those starships land back on the chopsticks every time they fly, and they fly so frequently. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's crazy that humans built this flying building, you know.
Right. That's so, yeah, definitely, definitely. And something I would love to turn to next is talking a bit about your experience teaching. Before joining Space Force, you spent some time as an assistant professor at UCLA in the aerospace studies department, preparing students to enter the space defense industry as part of the ROTC program. So, could you share what key technical or even soft skills should students focus on today to prepare for careers solving challenges in space?
Sure, yeah, that was one of the most rewarding experiences I've had professionally, being able to work with really brilliant undergrads at UCLA, and hosting students from crosstown universities like CSUN or Long Beach to get them ready to serve. And I think like the key things up front is, you got to be able to work on a team.
Mhm.
You got to have really clear and concise communication skills, because you're collectively going to be solving really, really complex problems, and you won't be able to, well, I won't say you won't be able to, but it'll be really hard to do that by yourself.
That's
And
right.
so that's like soft skills, adaptability, teamwork, communication,
Mhm.
problem solving. Um, and then technical, like obviously it is rocket science. So
Yes.
if you do end up, if you do want to be more on the technical side, then of course, um, aerospace engineering, mechanical engineering, those kinds of things are always needed. But there's also cybersecurity for space systems. There's also just data science and analytics with all the satellites that are pushing down data from space now. What do
Mhm.
we do with all this data? How can we more optimally reduce the amount of data that we're downlinking in order to optimize, the limited bandwidth that we have. And
Mhm.
so those are some of the technical skills that are most common that I've seen. Um, but the space industry is so broad. Like we need marketing, we need, yeah, obviously business strategists,
Mhm.
communications people, and so um, there's a lot more that people can do to get into the space industry.
That's great. And that's really great for our audience to hear because most of the folks that tune into this show, are on the business side of things, more entrepreneurship focused, more business focused and minded. So it's really great to know that whether you're technical or non-technical, there's certainly a place for you in the industry to find a way to contribute and to, really add value to just the overall mission of, companies need marketing, even government agencies need, communication to be able to and marketing to be able to convey to, mass audiences, the importance of the work being done, developments of the work being done. So absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That's definitely, I know, resonating with a lot of folks that tune into this show. Absolutely. So thank you. Thank you. And for current students who are listening to our conversation and are really excited about, what your experience has been like, really excited and inspired by your career journey, that we've discussed so far, what resources outside of campus, outside of their own schools, should they take advantage of, to really enter and gain a foothold in the space and defense industries? Are there maybe national programs or networks that students can join or further look into?
Yeah, I'll list a few that are top of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's the Matthew Izakowitz Fellowship, the Z Factor Fellowship, the Space Force Association, and these organizations or fellowships. They do a good job of exposing you to the space industry in all corners of the space industry. And
Mm-hmm.
so, the Matthew Izakowitz and Z Factor do a really good job of placing you with commercial companies. And then the Space Force Association does a really good job of educating people on what the Space Force actually is and what they're
Yeah.
doing and what they care about. And, of course, if you actually want to join the Space Force, then you can always participate in your university's Air Force ROTC program and join the local I-5 Space Squadron. I think the Space Force is a really good uh, place to start a career. It gives you the responsibility um, off the bat to lead teams and solve hard problems. And I think that's a skill that will always be in demand.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And for those of you listening, I hope you're taking notes because what Kevin's sharing right now is really, really valuable resources. I mean, he just listed several fellowships and programs and organizations that you can look to further explore careers in the field. So thank you, Kevin, for sharing that. I know the audience is going to find that really helpful and just kind of that definitely serves as a starting point for students looking to further explore careers in the space. So thank you. Where I'd like to take our conversation next is your experience in community leadership. Uh, you know, with the Air Force, you've worked on programs like the Hispanic Empowerment and Advancement Team. And so how did this work inform your perspective on, diversity, equity, and inclusion within the greater space and defense industry?
I'm glad you brought that up because I loved my time at the HEAT, the abbreviation for the Hispanic Empowerment and Advancement Team. I led the mentorship and professional development and retention efforts there. And basically, what the HEAT is, it's a Department of the Air Force, so that's Air Force and Space Force barrier analysis working group that serves Hispanic airmen and guardians to analyze policies, programs, and processes and identify racial, ethnic, or gender-based disparities and develop courses of action to remove those potential barriers into civilian and military service and increase Hispanic retention and senior leader representation.
Mhm.
So big, uh, big mission, and just like one stat off the bat, specific to Hispanic community is that we're 20% of the US population, growing to 30% by some estimate as early as 2040, 20. So like the, you know, growing minority, but specifically within the Department of the Air Force, senior leader representation is close to 1%. So
Mm.
you can see how that disparity starts uh, to make us ask questions,
Mhm.
and all with the goal of maximizing the potential of the workforce.
Mhm.
Like statistically, that those numbers should be a little closer. So what can we do to make that happen. And I think some of the things that we found that are common with Hispanic airmen and guardians were that they were the first person in their family to serve.
Mm.
Um, that when things are new, it's a little harder to be in a leadership, be comfortable to be in a leadership position when other people have generations of um, heritage to stand on. And English could be your second language. It's also tough for me personally to talk about astronautic concepts in Spanish. So there's a little
Oh
bit of
yeah.
that. Like talking to my family about like
Mhm.
orbital dynamics is impossible. I don't think I can. I haven't cracked that nut yet. Um,
Yeah.
but um, but yeah, and then just generally having strong family values that sort of dissuade people from leaving the nest, I think is pretty common for us as well. And so what we did was build a community in within the Department of the Air Force to help each other because it's easier to accept help from someone who's in a position that you want to be in, but also that has a similar background to you. I think
That's right.
they're more relatable. So that's what we did, and I think um, historically the space industry, not just the Department of the Air Force, but more broadly, has been pretty homogenous.
Mhm.
Older, male, white. Um, but what people forget is that um, civilizations around the world have been using astronomical techniques for thousands of years, and I think that shows that there's talent and a real interest from across the globe to add value to the space industry. And the US being arguably the most diverse country in the world,
Mhm.
space leaders know they need to be addressing these disparities in the space workforce for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing more about the work you do because certainly it is so important and you're right. Particularly the Latino and Hispanic population, it's a big part of, US the US population. And so I heard once that we cannot be what we can't see. So, increasing representations of power among, just more diverse leadership is so important. So you're right, that work is really, really critical to not only helping, empower those already in the industry who come from diverse backgrounds, but also inspiring, the new generation who's not sure what they want to do yet. Or I think there's certainly power in that, and that can be really, really inspiring and so important for just younger professionals and even just younger students to kind of just look out there and be able to see, oh, hey, if this person can do it and they come from my community, then I can do it too, and that's really, really critical. Empowering people and continuing to, yeah, just open doors for those who come after you. So definitely, that's so important. And within the Air Force specifically, you said you noticed this gap, and then you stepped up and decided, hey, I'm going to try to close the gap, address this, and clearly, there's some kind of discrepancy here. So how do you see that in other spaces within the industry, and what do you think could be done to close the gap in other places too?
Yeah, I think the space industry is doing a good job
Yeah.
of get, addressing the industry's growing need for diverse and skilled workforce.
Mhm.
So, for example, there's I forget how many companies exactly, but it's a few dozen companies that have collaborated to create the Space Workforce 2030 initiative. And the goal of this initiative is to inspire, prepare, and employ a future workforce capable of supporting the dynamic and diverse needs of space missions. So I think that it does a good job of outlining what the three um, barriers are to getting into the industry. One, you have to be interested in what it is and you have to be interested, you have to understand what it is.
Hmm.
So educating people, getting them immersed into different space companies to uh, enlighten them on what it is that we do and why it's cool and why it's important. Um, and then actually creating pathways for employment for these individuals to enter into the space industry and advance their careers. That's the Space Workforce 2030 initiative, and I think it's, that's the place to go if you want to join the space industry.
I see. Yeah, that's definitely that's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing about that. To the folks listening to our conversation today, if that tells you anything, it's that, with all of the exciting developments coming up, there's an abundance of opportunities to get involved, join the industry, find a way to contribute. And yeah, yeah, definitely. The workforce is growing, so there's many opportunities to dive right in and get involved. So thank you for sharing that, Kevin. And now I would love to talk about this new chapter in your career, your recent move to True Anomaly. You've recently stepped over to the commercial side, right? True Anomaly is a really big player in the space. So if you could tell the audience a little bit about what inspired this move into your current role today, which is your as the business development strategist for True Anomaly, and what does this mean for the next chapter of your career?
Absolutely. And, I want to start off by saying that I loved my time in service. It was very challenging, but also very, very rewarding. Um, and I met, some of the best people in the world, like literally the best people in the world. Um, but what I came to realize on the government side was that the the bureaucratic processes that were in place were not going to be sufficient to meet the demand that we were facing to respond to our speeding adversary. And so that was the key factor in me transitioning to the commercial sector, to a space startup like True Anomaly, who
Mhm.
has built a phenomenal team, who understands Space Force needs extremely well, and who have the talent and the capital to actually deliver these much needed capabilities on time and in an innovative way, so we can deliver them at a fraction of the price as well. Yeah, so that was the main thing, is like True Anomaly is in a position to deliver now, where in the government I felt a little hamstringed to be able to run at the pace we needed to.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that is definitely one of the ways that the commercial sector in the space industry kind of complements the government sector and the work being done on the government side in the industry. So, coming from the government background in the field, just much of your career was on the government side of things, and now transitioning over to the commercial side, that's really exciting because you're going to get to a point where you certainly understand both dynamics. And I think that definitely is so important. As you mentioned earlier, it's important to understand both the government side, understanding like how capabilities are adopted, but not only adopted, but enhanced and continued, to be advanced. So that's really interesting. And then moving now to the commercial side, you can continue to contribute to advancements in the space, just in a different way, in a different team, where innovation is really critical. And so, how do you see? Like what unique challenges and opportunities do you see for startups operating in the space security sector, as True Anomaly does? What do you kind of see as the upcoming challenges there, but also opportunities? And how do you see your previous experience and everything you've learned up until this point helping you contribute in this new role as a business development strategist? What does that look like to you, and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so what I found when working with startups was that, coming from their perspective, Space Force looks like one big behemoth of an organization, and it's kind of blurry and it's really hard to figure out where exactly you fit. And so that's a really tough challenge when you have a very niche product. And if you talk to one person in Space Force, even though your product may be valuable to Space Force somewhere, this person doesn't actually know who cares about what you're building. So that's how I want to, position True Anomaly for success, is to be able to shed light on all those, nooks and crannies in the Space Force and really connect the dots to where True Anomaly can maximize their value to the government.
Yeah. And that's very, very exciting. This is certainly a new chapter in your career. So, congratulations again on this new role. And I cannot wait to see what True Anomaly does next. With all the exciting developments in the field, this is certainly a great time to be in the industry. Things are ramping up. It's, an intense and a fast-paced industry to be in. So to now step over to the commercial side of things and to help, contribute to the mission in that way, that's very great. It's I'm really excited and can't wait to see what you do next with True Anomaly. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited. And like you said, now that I've joined True Anomaly, we are moving. It's a lot of fun.
Well,
Uh,
that's great. That's great.
moving.
Yeah, yeah. And to wrap up our conversation today, reflecting on your career so far, you've certainly done so much. What is one final word of advice that you would like to give to someone just starting out who, was really inspired by our conversation today, really inspired by your story, and wants to make a difference in the space tech or space defense field? What advice do you have for them? If you could speak directly to the audience listening.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, to your audience, I'd say, you know, first and foremost, stay curious.
Mm.
Find people doing the thing you want to do, establish a connection, ask them questions. We love helping other people get into the industry. Never and really never disqualify yourself from something you want because you don't fit the mold, or you're
Mm.
not studying rocket science, or you don't look like the people in the places you want to be. um, Trust me, we need what you have to offer. So yeah, stay curious and go for it.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your insights today and just a really great window into your experience. This was really great. And for students who would like to connect with you and reach out, where is the best place to find you?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, uh, Kevin Plascencia, Plascencia.
Great. Thank
But
you.
yeah,
Yeah, and definitely for those of you listening who would like to reach out to Kevin, I will include a link to his LinkedIn in the show
there you go.
notes. So for those of you who
Thanks.
want to reach out, feel free to connect with Kevin. Kevin, thank you so much for your time today. This has just been such a great conversation. You've shared so many incredible insights to our audience today, and thank you so much. And I can't wait to see what you do next. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thanks, Rose. Thanks, for hosting. You're an awesome host, and excited that you have this audience that's eager to learn about the space industry and how they can help.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you. It's leaders like you that really go on to inspire the audience to see, what's next in the industry and you really inspire them on ways that they can get involved. So thank you again. And yeah, thank you. Take care.
Awesome, Rose. Take care.